Denise is Miss Dubik. It will be out Monday and Wednesday, and you've been doing a lot with Kerbal Space Program. And what I wanted to talk to you about for the next two times we meet is just a general overview on flight and what you can careers in it as far as aerospace goes, and what's happening today, which is really some exciting times. So if you want to grow up and work in space industry, there's actually companies doing that now, and it's very exciting times. All right. So first one we're going to talk about is Spaceship One, and there's the moon behind it. There's Spaceship One. There's the ship that dropped Spaceship One. Spaceship One was the first privately owned space program to go into space, manned. All right, and it's a really an amazing story. So with Phil, we're going to go ahead. Excuse me. And talk a little bit about that today. All right. Now, this is based on actually Burt Rutan's notes on this. So I want to make sure we get this. This is a public document Burt Rutan produced. All right. Here's the wild thing. If you've ever used Windows, one of the founders was Windows. Wait, we got a question here. Let's make sure it gets answered. Question. It's back here. Are we going to be using Kerbal? No, not today. We'll wait for Miss Stupid to cut back, and she'll take you away with it, okay? Now, let's talk about how it got started. You're going to learn a lot about Burt Rutan. Burt Rutan is the designer. He's probably the premier airplane designer of our generation. He has more than 60 designs I'm aware of. I believe in the number 60. And he's an amazing, amazing man. Well, he was funded by Paul Allen, who co-founded Windows. Every time you buy a copy of Windows, you buy a computer that's got Windows, you're sending money to these two guys right here when they were much younger, Bill Gates and Paul Allen. Here's Paul Allen today next to Burt Rutan, you see up there. And here's their model of Spaceship One. And this is after it landed and went to deep space. So a very interesting cat. Paul Allen said he wanted to break that and approached Burt Rutan. Now, to give you an idea, before 2004, this is where this performance envelope of most aircraft was. Spaceship One had to get to this kind of performance, this kind of altitude, 400 kilometers up, Mach speed, 3 times the speed of sound. All the other aircraft were down here somewhere, that were trying to get that. They were getting up a little bit farther, but they weren't getting any higher. It was a dramatic increase. So here's the baseline mission. We'll just talk about it. The White Knight is a big ship, and I'll show you White Knight up here. Here we go back up. White Knight is this ship right here. Spaceship One is a little one. We'll get above it, but it carries Spaceship One up into space. All right. Then it's a rocket boost. So White Knight climbs up, gets the at about 50,000 feet. It launches with a rocket boost. It drops Spaceship One, which launches up for a rocket. It goes all the way up to the top. It's pulling 2 Gs. If you think about it on an amusement park ride, when you get squished in the ride, you're twice your body weight. That's what 2G would be. So it's a lot. It's jamming the pilots in the seat. Up it goes, all right? And it goes for accelerations. It accelerates for 80 seconds. Doesn't sound like much, except it goes from half the speed of sound to 3 times the speed of sound. And remember, it's going straight vertical. It goes up to weightlessness. Then it deaccelerates, which really isn't a physics word, but we use it. It has to slow down, and then it lands like a glider. Now, when they start, all right, now to give you an idea, this is how high it is. There's Canada up here. So they take off, it's carried up to here, it goes straight up and then comes back down. The crucial thing on this is, and our Challenger, our space shuttles, and which are now getting before your age, is when you fall that much, when you come back into orbit, your objects run against air. They heat up. That's what was happening if you ever see gravity. Any object falling through the atmosphere, falling from space down in the Earth, burns up. It's a shooting star. And what's happening is, as you fall, you get faster and faster and faster. The molecules start rubbing against you. They start warming things up. And then literally, it catches on fire and burns. And that's why when you see a shooting star, it's something burning up in our atmosphere. That should give you a sense of how fast you're going, how much energy. You're taking all that potential energy, it's becoming kinetic energy, and it can only go so fast, and then it gives off as heat. Now, those are heavy concepts, but you guys, I think, are capable of it. So just think, their big design problem was not getting up there. They could get a rocket engine to go up. It was coming back down, nobody getting hurt, and making sure they could slow down enough. So if you go up here, see how it's flat on the wing? It feathers, it pops forward. That's what deaccelerates it, which is really quite incredible. All right? So, and to give you how high up there, it's 70 miles up, they can live in Canada. Also, think about this. How wild is this? We're all Charlotte here. So imagine the distance it would take you to go from South Charlotte to Statesville. Let me see. In less distance than it would take for you to get to Columbia, you could be in deep space. If I could take your car and you could go straight up in your car, it would be half there. Does that make sense? So our atmosphere is extremely thin, but still really quite a pick here. All right. Then let's talk about a little bit of history of this. Okay. Suborbital means you go up into space, but you don't orbit those. You guys have learned about orbiting with Kerbal. So we're suborbital. We're just trying to get into space. And I'm about as old as the space program. I was born in 1959. Russians launched Sputnik in 58. All right. And some of the early ones were the Mercury Redstone projects. And here Alan Grissom, Shepard, and Gus Grissom went up in this. You want an amazing story about these guys. When they were standing there with the president watching the early test flights of these rocket motors of these ships, the spaceship that they were all going to ride on within the next 10 months, this was at the time, early 60s, blew up on the pad. And these guys still got on there. At the same time, a fellow by the name of Joe Walker wasn't even using that kind of spaceship, was getting up high into space. So as time goes on, we have more and more aircraft that are doing that. The Air Force have a lot of these. Most of it we don't know. This one, the X-15 that went up suborbital, this one's primarily was to go fast. Very fast. This one, Spaceship One, it's altitude in view. So one thing I want you to know about engineering. Engineering, form follows function. What are you trying to do? Trying to go fast, your airplane's going to look like one thing. Trying to carry a lot of people, going to look like something totally different. All right? So it all depends. It's interesting. The trajectory is 40 degrees, which is pretty steep. On Spaceship One, it's nearly vertical. All right? They're both weightless, about the same level of time. That's pretty, I think. It's also, this one flies, landing, approach, and touchdowns, 250. This is 105. These are knots. But you see, this one is much heavier. It takes a little more runway. You got to go faster. You fall out. Okay. So back in 2001, Paul Allen starts this. All right. Notice something about how engineering works. All right. It's a cycle. It's a method. And I can't stress that enough, folks. When you learn what we're trying to teach you is a method of solving problems. And for those who are just joining us, Miss Stubik is not here. I'm talking a little bit about Spaceship One, and today, and then we're going to talk about SpaceX next. All right, but for today, let's focus right now on Spaceship One. So, because these are careers, if you want to be someday design spaceships, aircraft, those are two places you might want to get there. Now you're going to need to study hard and do really well because everybody wants to go work there. But so 2001, Paul Allen says in March, hey, I'm interested in doing this. By May, which is really, really fast, they had designs. He had probably been working on this for a while. Rutan is the rocket designer in this, and he'd been working on it a while, so that's why they were ready to go. Probably had his designs pretty much complete, and he just had to work out the details. They decide on a motor. They get a used rocket motor, believe it or not, which I think is pretty messy. By May, they get the designs. June, they already start building it, which is pretty quick, folks. It usually takes us years to be doing this traditionally. They started testing their rockets by November 2002. So let me go back there. So fabrication starts June of 2001. First flight as a glider, August 2nd. That's nearly unheard of. Now, they're also at the same time working on rocket launches because it's really just a glider then. They start on, and that was White Knight 1, by the way. So fabrication starts. White Knight 1, remember, for those people who came in earlier, is the plane that carries Spaceship One into space. So remember, this spaceship gets carried into space. It looks like, let me run you back up here. There's Spaceship One. White Knight. This is Spaceship One. This is looking at the moon when they took this shot. All right, now. All right, so they build White Knight 1 August 2nd. They start on Spaceship 1 May of 2002. So to me, it's amazing. Within a year, they're working on it. Demo flight Space Station 1. After starting in May, in less than a year, they go out and try it. By now, White Knight 1 had flown 21 times. Just make sure this plane can lift it up. Here's White Knight 1 right here. Here's another picture of it. See it? Very bizarre looking thing. Very cool. All right. But make no mistake, these are test flight planes. So with White Knight 1, they're building Spaceship 1. That's this plane right here. Right. While they're building that one, they're test flying and building this plane. So they really have to make 2 test flights at the same time, folks. Think about that. They had to design the plane that carried up the spaceship, and they had to design the spaceship. This is highly, highly unusual. All right. Then, by July, so 2 years later, in July, they do the first carry. Spaceship One is being carried by White Knight 1. That's back in July of 2003. All right. Then they do the first glide in August. So they carry it up, they glide it down. The first time with the rockets, December 3rd. And then the X Prize flights that put them in space and everything is September 2004. So from when they started this to when they did it, it's a little over 3 years, which is impressive. Amazingly impressive. So here's the White Knight carrying it. They developed it, like 10 months. They had 56 flights. They had to test the rockets, Spaceship One, 2 captive carries, 1 man, glide test. They did that, a couple, then rocket, then X Prize. X Prize was a prize put out to encourage people to go in space exploration. Aviation has a long history of this. We crossed the Atlantic, as well as the English Channel and other things, with space prizes. I'm a big advocate of that because it keeps the American taxpayer off the hook. You only pay if the person does it. So we could do a space prize that say, be the first person to land on Mars, bring back soil samples. Everybody's got to come back safe. And we will pay you $10 billion, which sounds like a lot. But if you tried to do it on your own, it'd be 18 or 20 billion at least. And it might be a lot more with cost overruns. Here, this way, other people are being creative and taking the risk. I can't stress it enough. We need to explore space. We are peoples that have grown, migrating around the world. We all love to travel. Our ancestors moved from spot to spot. We were hunter-gatherers. It's in our DNA to travel, to search. That's what space travel does for us. I can tell you, well, it creates new technologies. It does, but if you really just want to create new technologies, invest in new technologies. Also, it's a lot better if we have more than one place for humans to call home. All right, now, here's the early research napkins. Yeah, that's a real napkin. He started drawing this back in 1995. So when I tell you he was thinking about it, he really was. And this was done by Burt Rutan, the actual person who designed this. And at first they were looking at parachutes. And he realized that was going to be a big problem. It was still going to come down too hot. Parachute, Lord knows, is the air's too thin? Is it really going to slow everything down? You've got a problem with heat. A lot of issues. You know, his first one was Proteus. This was his original ideas, which isn't that far, you know, look at back in 1995. Then Carefree Entry. The feather is, I can't stress it enough. Here's the rocket, but this is when it's in its feathered position. It allows it to enter in, and it has so much drag. Think about when if you did flight with us in the fall. There's two types of drag. Drag is when you run through the beach, you feel drag as you're running through the water, right? Airplanes and everything moving through the air have to fight drag. We just said that drag creates heat, which burns things up in our atmosphere. That's shooting stars. This feathering configuration slows the airplane down through drag. But it's not the air. It's not the air going over the plane creating this parasitic drag. It's the shape of the plane, and we wanted to do that. We wanted to slow it down. And what's great is it's, you know, just engage it. It works. You don't have to. The space shuttle had tiles and all these computers. It was unbelievable. And you know, here's the configuration back in 2001 when they thought, well, this is what we're going to have. You know, here it is. You know, this is what they started looking at their different design ideas. And then there was this whole idea of this rocket that we're going to drop it, let it fall, point it vertical, and then hit it. And it's really burning laughing gas. Another bit of trivia. All right? Now, we're not going to worry about reading all these. All right, now give you an idea. They had simulators, and what they spent a lot of money, and we do this a lot now. If you and I were to go into business, we're going to design a new airplane. And if you're an airliner, particularly, we can't go in there worried that it may or may not work, right? It needs to work. And the best thing they do is they do simulators. And when they build a simulator they think describes the airplane, and then they go out and predict how the plane should fly, and then they fly the plane, and they make sure, yes, that's exactly how it flies. And then they go out and test it. So they did a pretty extensive simulator, and they were able to practice this quite a bit before they ever got in the airplane. And it worked like they thought. And this is nitrous solid fuel rocket. Okay. Most modern rockets use liquid fuel. We can control that, like adding gasoline to your car. This is solid rocket. This is like something when we launch rockets with rocket motors, gunpowder. So it's pretty amazing. All right. But it's safe. It works. And remember, all they're doing is blowing it up to the top. They don't have to reuse it. They're just going to use it. They're using it once. And then sometimes they can fill it up right on top, the next day. Here is the crew. All right. And while they really just do two, another thing, the shell on Spaceship One, it's fiberglass. Same stuff you use in a surf when they make fiberglass surfboards. That's all that's in there. So just a few inches of material between you and the vacuum of space. So that's the opening of this thing. They had to make their own avionics. That means electronics to describe the world around them. When you fly in space, it's really wild. The middle of the day, you take off, you get up to space, it goes dark. Your sky shrinks and it becomes black, which I think is pretty amazing too. This shows you aerodynamic analysis, and it showed them that they could come back down and they wouldn't burn up. And again, immune from a flight control. If this is put out, it allows the plane to come back down, and we know we're not going to burn up in the atmosphere. Does anybody have any questions on this? So far? No questions? Anybody here thinking they want to go into space, by the way, before I go any further? Raise your hand if you think you want to go into space, maybe. All right, we got at least one of you. Good. All right, now I thought we'd be, honestly, when you told me when I was your age, we thought we would be staying on the moon and going to Mars. If you would have asked my age at your time, I would have said, oh no, we'll be orbiting the Earth, there'll be space stations. I was so pumped, and we just lost interest as a country. All right. They developed a lot of all this stuff themselves. Here's the crew, Here they're loading an engine. Aerodynamicist, this is Jim Tithe. That's this guy. There's the motor. And his baby spaceship. Look at that. Here was 2003. Buzz Aldrin, who's a very famous astronaut, came there. A lot of really pretty neat things, folks. I want to show you this. I won some different trophies. And he got Designer of the Year. This is the young guy. Here's the other thing that's so cool about this. If you go watch Scale Composites that make this, they had young folks doing this. All right. And I saw him at the National Air Museum. Or I should say at EAA and not National Air Museum. And Spaceship One is in the Smithsonian now. Spaceship One hangs in the Smithsonian. Right near St. Louis, and X1, that would broke the speed barrier. So it's right up there with all these important ones. How many people have gone to space and Air and Space Museum? It's Smithsonian's Air and Space. If you're ever in DC, go there. It's the most amazing museum. This is the Spirit of St. Louis, an airplane that actually was the first airplane to go across the Atlantic Ocean. This is the first plane to go faster than the speed of sound, and there's Spaceship One. Okay, he's talking about lessons learned that you should just really overreach. If you're really successful, go select something that really pushes you. You're going to learn from it. I also think, and I wonder if it's in here, he also made a point here from researching, hire the best talent. As you do things, get the most talented person when you can, because if two average people don't make up for one talented person necessarily in solving a problem. I don't mean to be harsh, but I'm just saying, and that's the courage. So work hard, do well at these guys. It's very competitive to get into this place. Now, what their goal with Spaceship One was, hey, there's a lot of pent-up demand for people like, for example, Mr. Dubik, that would love to go to space, would absolutely think that would be incredible. So they wanted to do that. And in fact, let's look at the Spaceship One, and I'll tell you where it's going to go. So here's Spaceship One landing. This is when they won the X Prize first. So there it is, which is not a very good video as I thought I had here. Let's see. Lots of people, what I really want you to see out of this is how many people end up there to watch this. All right. Now, let's hold that off. All right. I'm sorry. I'll look up. We can get you some better footage of that. For those people that came in. So this is Spaceship One for people, again, that showed in a little bit later. Okay. All right. Now, what is their plans with Spaceship One? Well, their plans with Spaceship One is to go out and take people up into space. And that led to this. And that's where they are. Burt Rutan since retired, but automatically went out and designed another airplane, so he's never really going to retire. So here's Spaceship One. And you can look at some of the very interesting, watch this. This is the Apollo program. My father-in-law was a rocket scientist during this.
Apollo 8 went to the moon. They didn't land, but they did circle the moon. And I was watching it on television, and at a certain point, one of the astronauts casually said, "We're going to turn the camera around and show you the Earth." And he did. And that was the first time I had ever seen the planet hanging in space like that. And it was profound.
I think that for me, like for many other people, it was quite a shock. I don't think any of us had any expectations about how it would give us such a different perspective. I think the focus had been, we're going to the stars, we're going to the other planets, and suddenly we look back at ourselves, and it seems to imply a new kind of self-awareness.
One of the astronauts said, when we originally went to the moon, our total focus was on the moon. We weren't thinking about looking back at the Earth. But now that we've done it, that may well have been the most important reason we went.
Yeah, what a beautiful shot of the Earth, isn't that, folks? How thin our atmosphere.
I remember going through launch, which is an overwhelming experience.
There's a space shuttle.
The engines cut off. I felt myself floating out of the seat. I floated over to the window.
Look at that.
Looked out, and we were coming up over the coast of Africa. And that's when it hit me. I'm in space. And, I just got incredibly excited because it's something I had dreamed about since I was 6 years old.
I think you start out with this idea of what it's going to be like. And then when you do finally look at the Earth for the first time, you're overwhelmed by how much more beautiful it really is when you see it for real. It's just like it's this dynamic, alive place that you see glowing all the time.
It was truly incredible to be up there, doing what I always wanted to do my whole life, and then to kind of glance back at our planet and see that view was just tremendous.
Now,
I can only describe what I've seen. You know, looking down at the Earth and you see that line that separates day into night slowly moving across the planet. Thunderstorms on the horizon casting these long shadows as the sun sets. And then watching the Earth come alive. And you see the lights from the cities and the towns.
The events you see from space, like flying over thunderstorms, looking at them from the top, were spectacular. Like a fireworks show going on, and you're looking at it from the very top.
You know, shooting stars going below us, or you know, dancing curtains of auroras. It's just very hard to describe all the, you know, the colors, the beauty, the motion.
so what they're talking about is taking people up. Spaceship One has now become Virgin Galactic. And they're looking at inviting people to go up there so you can see it. So here's another shot. Let me show you this. Now again, they're telling you to go to, they want you to fly up there and ride around, look outside.
Humans have managed to learn so much about the universe in such a relatively small time frame compared with the life of the universe.
It's our destiny to reach out beyond our world and into the universe, and to gaze back and appreciate what we have here on Earth.
This is the new White Knight.
If you're inquisitive about life and inquisitive about the world around us, most of what's around us is space.
There's no question that building a space line is challenging, and it means that many of the things that we do have never been done before. The vision is to let people go see space from above. Every astronaut I've talked to, that changes them. From above, you don't see state and country borders. You see the Earth's resources as fragile environment. The more people that see that themselves, the more they'll make that part of their daily lives. And I hope by the time my kids are ready to go into space, we've changed our global culture to recognize that space is where we belong, and the Earth is something that needs to be a little better protected.
All right. So you're seeing it. They want you to go and take you. Let me take you back. So they become Virgin Galactic. And they've unfortunately, go back here. They're the first spaceship on here. And they've done some satellites. But, you know, they want, here, let me show you this next one. Here's they're making some of the spaceships.
It's a place where few have gone, and most will never see. But that may all be about to change. The unimaginable is being engineered. A commercial ship to shoot people into space.
Can the public go to the moon in their lifetime? Can they go to resort hotels on orbit for their vacation?
Mass space tourism could be right around the corner, but it's an astronomically expensive and already deadly venture. Is this the beginning, or the beginning of the end?
For the facilities that he would be in charge of building.
I definitely wasn't supposed to be put under camera. It's pretty infectious, this project, in terms of how exciting it is.
So,
when it comes to innovative ideas, one man seems to have no shortage of them. Billionaire Richard Branson. His latest, a plan for the world's first commercial space liner. By his side is the ship's creator, legendary aerospace engineer Burt Rutan.
We are aiming a suborbital system to a low enough operating cost that it could eventually reach millions of people.
The men have dreamed of space tourism for years.
I'd seen the moon landing as a young boy. I assumed that one day I'd be able to go into space. and soon realized that governments were not really interested in you or me going into space. So in 1991, I embarked on a mission to try to find a technician or engineer who could build a reusable spaceship. It wasn't until I met Burt Rutan that I finally found the genius, the engineer that could make it all possible. I originally met Burt through my ballooning expeditions. I was attempting to be the first person to be able to cross the Atlantic in a balloon. And then on many flights that we attempted to try to be the first to fly around the world in a balloon. Burt gave a lot of useful advice in building capsules that could fly at 30,000, 40,000 feet.
We're at one hell of an angle.
We're finding great difficulty actually getting the balloon to go down.
Branson never made it around the world, so he set his sights on space travel and put Rutan in charge.
Yeah. We won't have to put a barrier.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the idea.
Yeah,
and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's great.
Burt Rutan is an icon in the aviation world. He rapidly gained fame in the 60s and 70s for his innovative approach to design.
Look, he's testing his Spaceship One, throwing a model.
For over 3 decades, he designed, built, and tested new aircraft at the startling rate of more than one a year. In 2004, Burt unveils Spaceship One, his entry for the $10 million Ansari X Prize, a contest to spur space tourism.
So you're going to come on the Fort Hungary touchdown and say, show me the money.
10 seconds, Brad.
Burt has designed a plane that can fly to the edge of the atmosphere, then drop its cargo.
Release. Fire.
See how that rocket's going straight up?
Holy crap, that was close.
Pilot Brian Binney shoots out of the atmosphere and into outer space.
350, just shut down. Roger, shut down. Well, it's really quiet up here. Copy. Coming down.
The spaceship returns safely to Earth.
3, 2, 1.
I think that was...
Burt's team wins the civilian space race.
You are the man.
And the $10 million prize.
If I could please invite onto the stage Burt Rutan, the designer of the first private spaceship.
There's
Spaceship
Paul
One.
Allen
Burt.
that was standing next to him.
Burt takes to the stage with his backer, Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen.
I was thinking a little bit about that other space agency. The big guys, I think they're looking at each other now and saying, we're screwed. Because I'll tell you something, I have a hell of a lot bigger goal. And you know what that goal is? I absolutely have to develop a manned space tourism system that's at least 100 times safer than anything that's ever flown manned to space, and probably a lot more. I have to do that.
Virgin Galactic Airways was born a week ago. 3 years from now, Burt has promised to deliver 5-seater spacecraft to take people into space, and hopefully it'll be the start of a lot of people being...
All right, now, they're not on that track anymore. They're going to take a little bit longer. This is experimental aircraft. They had an accident, and that killed one pilot. They deployed. You know how they put down that fin for slowing things down? They thought they could put it up at a certain speed. They were going too fast, and it tore up the aircraft. You know, so it's one of those things that it's still not trivial to the experiment. Now, by the time they're ready to take passengers in it, they'll have it much safer. Now, before you think, well, hey, I'm going to call mom, I want to be on a list to go land on there, you need to go, you need really to start a business, get very successful. It's going to be quite expensive, frighteningly expensive to go up there, but a really amazing event. Okay? Next time, we're going to talk about Elon Musk and SpaceX, which, Spaceship One, these are confusing. He's a different approach on this. So we'll go ahead and talk about what they're doing and give you a sense of how many exciting things are going on right to space. Are there any questions? Okay, well, today we're going to end up just a little bit early. I don't think it makes sense to start the next one, and we won't be able to stay, and there's not enough time to do it justice. Okay? All right, folks. I think we have lab in, 2 weeks. I think we had lab last week. So in 2 weeks we have it. We'll have our underwater robots done, and then we're working on some other cool stuff. Okay? All right. And if there's no more questions, I'm going to shut it down. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.